everyone, let's go over the deadlift. This is one of my favorite lower body exercises. It's a hip dominant hip hinge, straight leg, hip extension exercise. For this movement, it's really important to master the hip hinge first and foremost before you add load. Otherwise, you put yourself at risk of injuring your back. If you injure your back, it's probably one of the worst injuries you can sustain for lifting and for overall quality of life. So first things first is injury prevention. So let's make sure we have the hip hinge down pat. The hip hinge is a hip dominant movement. So watch how my hips move back like this. My back stays in neutral. My spine, I am not rounded over like this. And I also have a very soft bend in my knees. So contrast this with the squat in which you're flexing primarily at the hips and the knees. The deadlift is going to be mostly the hips just driving straight back. My chest stays up, back stays nice and flat, and I come back up. So here's what the hip hinge looks like in motion. Rep, 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 just like that. If you are unfamiliar with the hinge, please spend some extra time practicing this movement pattern. I have another video with numerous different drills you can practice, so go back and make sure you are a master of the hip hinge before you move on to the loaded deadlift, okay? So moving on to the deadlift, we have two primary variations. I'm going to show you both of those plus a third variation that's kind of a hybrid between the two, okay? Now, when it comes to choosing which one you want to do, it's really up to you. Personal preference, whatever feels most natural for you, whatever feels best. Some of you will definitely find that one feels way better for you than another, and another one, maybe the other version you just cannot do correctly without it feeling totally wonky for you. So let's get started. First is the conventional deadlift. This is what's considered the most, I guess, the main deadlift variation. And for this one, I'll do a head-on view. For this one, you'll see that my feet are roughly shoulder width apart, can be a little bit narrower. The bar is intersecting my midfoot, okay? And my hands, and when I come down, are outside my feet. So this would be my starting position for the deadlift, for the conventional, okay? Then from here, I can take a deep breath in, brace, get my lats nice and tight, and pull it off the ground, and back down. So I'm going to show you what it looks like from the side. So I'll turn around this way, okay? So notice how this is my starting position right here. You don't want to be too far behind the barbell, so I'm obviously exaggerating a little bit just to show you what not to do, but you don't want to be so far behind the barbell so that when you do your first pull, you have to roll it back in towards you before it comes off the ground. So don't let that happen, okay? So you should be very close with your shins almost right up against the barbell. And as you come down, your hips should not be so high that you're almost doing a stiff leg deadlift like this, but you also don't want to be so low that you're turning your deadlift into a squatty deadlift. And I've done numerous posts on my Instagram about this before, and truth be told, it's really difficult for me to even get into this position, but I'll try to do my best. So if I were to start down here, so this feels totally off for me, that would be what's considered a squatty deadlift. And unfortunately, you see a lot of these with different fitness modeling photos, with people trying to pretend like they're doing a deadlift and their hips are way too low. So what you want to be, you want to have your armpits directly over the barbell. So right around here is a really good start position. From here, what then I want to do is I want to pull my weight back onto my heels and get my lats nice and tight. So think of cranking your arms into the bar like this and squeezing pencils in your armpits. And that's going to get everything nice and tight. This will also help with what's called taking the slack out of the bar or taking the jerk out of the bar. So especially if you have bumper plates, you can start to, if you listen carefully, you can hear this click with the barbell, okay? You'll see this happen. If you start paying attention, you'll see this happening with some people lifts, and maybe this is a mistake that you do yourself, is you start here, and you start from a dead stop with the barbell, and then you jerk it off the floor, and your whole body does this jerk. And even though you may start in a really good spinal position just like this, as you jerk, you lose that positioning and you end up rounding at the lumbar spine, at the low back. This is not what you want to have happen. So instead of this, first you want to pull the barbell. Don't pull it off the ground just yet, but pull on the barbell and your weight should be back on your heels. So you'll hear a click first before it leaves the ground. So listen carefully. You got here, right there. And then now when I pull, it's a soft pull off the ground. Just like that, okay? Now let's talk about on the way down for the conventional deadlift. You don't squat the deadlift even on the way down. So once you've made it up to the top, let your hips drive back first. Hips, hips, hips. So notice how I'm not really bending at the knees. Hips, 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 hips. And then once it passes my knees, then you can squat it down. Okay, so make sure that happens for sure. Okay, so let's move on to the sumo deadlift. So I'm going to show you a frontal view again first. Sumo deadlifts involves a wide stance with the feet. So here's about where I would be. Remember, conventional is like this with the feet. Sumo is nice and wide. Now, as I come down, do not push your knees forward. This is what happens if you let your knees drop forward as you come down and grab the bar. The barbell rolls away from you, okay? You don't want that to happen. Instead, jelly. Instead, you want to push your knees out this way to the side, not forward that way, okay? So we're going to go out. So as I come down, notice how the barbell's not moving. And then at the bottom, as I get into position, notice how my hands are between my feet, between my feet right here. You also don't want to grab too close with your hands like this. So think of just coming straight down with your arms right around here. Your grip should be even on the bar, so look out for the knurling to make sure you have an even grip so you're not gripping the barbell like this, which actually does happen. And you'll notice that your shins are roughly vertical to the floor, just like this at the top, at the bottom before you do your first pull. So this is where I am, okay? Primary difference between the sumo deadlift and the conventional is that sumo deadlift tends to hit a little more quads because you are staying a little more upright with the torso. Shear stress on the spine is greater in the conventional deadlift, which is why a lot of times I have numerous clients with low back injuries and things like that to where they cannot perform conventional deadlift, but the sumo deadlift is actually just fine for them. So keep that in mind. And then as well, the range of motion for the sumo deadlift is less. However, the glute activation is very similar between the two lifts. Okay, just a little side note there. Okay, so this is my start position. Notice how I have a little bit of a foot flare pointing out this way. Conventional, toes are pointed forward. Sumo can point out, anywhere between 15, 30, 45 degrees, whatever is natural for you. I tend to do more of a foot flare so probably more like 45 degrees is where I am. So from here, grabbing directly underneath me. Otherwise, everything is the same. Nice tight lats. Weight back onto my heels. Take the slack out of the bar. Keep the bar nice and close to my shins. Tall. Reverse the motion. On the way down, again, do not let your deadlift turn into a squatty deadlift. So you don't want your knees to jut forward first on the way down. Should be hips back first. Up. Just like that. So I'll show you from the side. You're here. Sumo deadlift, you get down to start. Neutral spine, chin tucked. Lats nice and tight. Pull your weight back onto your heels. Just like that. Okay, so those are the two main deadlift variations. I'm going to show you one more because it's a fun option to at least try. As well, this is the variation that I love to use. So for those of you who see me on Instagram or just on social media posting my deadlift, it is not a sumo deadlift. It is not a conventional deadlift. It is called a semi-sumo deadlift. So it's basically like the regular sumo. However, instead of my stance, my feet out here, my feet are actually about 3 to 4 inches closer on either side. So if you look down, using the knurling on the bar, which is, they're the diagonal cuts, going this way and then going this way on the bar, I'm just right where, my shins are right up against where the knurling starts, going out this way. But then otherwise, same deal, knees out as I come down, hands directly beneath me like this, and then I do my pull, so here's what that would look like. This feels way natural for me. Truth be told, I do enjoy the standard sumo stance. However, last time I did this a couple years ago, I pulled my hamstring. So when I start doing too wide of a stance for my particular anatomy, I start to feel a really bad pulling pain on my left side. So I found that when I bring my stance in closer, that does not happen. So that is the reason why I do it. Definitely something that you can try, and if you end up liking it as well, then you can incorporate that variation into your routine. The other thing I will say about sumo deadlifts does involve more flexion at the hips a lot of times, so it may be the case that your particular hip anatomy is not well suited to handle high volume of the sumo deadlift, so you may find that your hips start to get cranky, maybe a little bit painful after a few weeks of sumo, in which case you should switch back to the conventional deadlift, give your hips a bit of a break. So that can happen as well. You'll find that when you start going heavier in load on the deadlift, your grip becomes a limiting factor. So you know that you can pull more total load, however, your grip starts slipping. So two solutions that I want you guys to try. First one is to use a mixed grip. So one hand over hand. One hand is over, one hand is under the bar like this. So let's do my sumo, just like this. Very simple. This is the mixed grip. Okay, and it allows you to pull far more weight. I would, in general, recommend switching grips every set. So maybe set 1, you do it like this. Set 2, you do it like this to help prevent muscular imbalances and help prevent injuries. You'll probably find that one side feels a lot more natural to you than another, totally normal. For example, this to me is way natural. This feels totally weird. It feels like, kind of like when you write with your non-dominant hand. That's what it feels like for me. But I do try to switch it up to keep things safe. The other option is to use chalk. You can use actual chalk, you can use liquid chalk. Make sure your gym allows chalk to be used. You don't have to make a big mess out of it, so I'll show you real quick. I have a block of chalk, very, very simple. You can just get it for a few bucks at your local sporting goods store. You can buy it from Amazon. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. So I have a block of chalk here. You can keep it in a Ziploc bag if you go to the gym. And all you have to do is put your hands in the bag. Here's where you want to chalk up, just like that, okay? You don't need to put chalk all over your hand. You don't need to clap and get chalk all over the gym. This is why they don't like chalk in the gyms, because they usually make a mess. So right there is good. So once you have your chalk, this will help increase the friction on the bar so they don't slip out of your hands. So you can even use chalk plus the mixed grip when you're doing your sets. But otherwise, some people will ask about using lifting straps. They're fine, but I am really a fan of just improving your own grip overall. So even if, let's say they're your first week doing deadlifts, you find your grip giving out, just keep practicing any grip exercises week after week, and you'll find that your grip will naturally improve over time. So just be patient. So again, my preference is for you guys to not use lifting straps, but if you feel like you need to, then that is not a terrible option to use, okay? So that is all. Oh, the last thing I will say about the deadlift is for shoes. I have Nike Metcons I'm wearing right now. You want to wear shoes with a very flat, minimal sole that's not soft. So for example, running shoes are a terrible option for deadlifting because 1, you're not running. Second of all, they're soft. 2 and 3, you're much higher off the ground, so you'll have to travel, the barbell will have to travel that much farther. You don't want that to be the case. As well, you want to be pulling through a hard surface as much as possible. So if your gym allows it, you can lift in honestly just your socks. Take your shoes off, lifting just your socks for deadlifting. Converse, great option. I love my Nike Metcons. You can wear New Balance Minimus, and then any other brand of training shoe that puts you in a great position. Minimal sole. It doesn't have to be anything fancy whatsoever. So make sure you have the correct footwear to be pulling, okay? And the very, very last thing I will say about deadlifts is please do not lift with your ego. Obviously, this goes for every single exercise, but particularly for the deadlift. Last thing you want to do is to get yourself hurt in the gym when you're trying to improve your health, right? And improve your strength, improve your body composition. Those things cannot happen when you are sidelined due to an injury. So make sure you are lifting weights, not egos. Please do not let this start happening with your back while you deadlift because you're getting over eager. Maintain strict form. I am really, really big on going lighter in load on the deadlift and prioritizing form. So it's very, very easy to get caught up and get excited about the PRs you're setting from week to week. You're going up 5 pounds, going up 10 pounds every week. And because you want to chase these certain numbers, you let form slip a little bit and it can become a very slippery slope. So don't let that happen. Take form check videos, film yourself from the front, film yourself from the side. Make sure that everything is staying in check so you can stay injury free and have a long and healthy training career.